that was how it was. But I mean, we scored 22 points in that season.
That's not bad.
Which was fabulous, given that obviously you only got points up to sixth place back in those days. McLaren had got the whole thing tied up. Williams were running the Judd engine, but they didn't run it as well as we did. I think they'd got other problems with the car, but that 881 that Adrian had designed was one hell of a car, and it sort of passed into folklore a little bit that season because, we actually was the only car, I think, that got in front of a McLaren for the whole season, and that was at Suzuka. And albeit for 200 yards or whatever it was down the main straight, but that was
Capelli and Gugelmin?
That was it was Capelli and Gugelmin, yeah. But that in Japan, leading the race in Japan in front of Honda was absolutely gold dust for Leyton House. You couldn't have. There wasn't enough money to buy that publicity that we got for doing that.
Japanese company, is that right?
It was what? Sorry.
Leyton House was a Japanese company, is that right?
Yeah. It was owned by a guy called Akira Akagi, who'd made lots of money in lots of different ways, but a lot of it was property and shares and things like that. He made himself an incredibly wealthy guy. But Leyton House was essentially a fashion house, but the big thing that they had was actually the colour of the car, and the whole presentation and the colour of our team gear and all the merchandise and everything like that. It just stood out
absolutely
above anybody else.
You spot it a mile off.
You could. And I mean, at the end of the season in Adelaide, I mean, we always used to we'd sell all our team gear. They had the sort of like the market sale at the after the race, and we used to get big dollars for our team gear because some of the teams weren't allowed to sell it. I mean, McLaren, Ron Dennis used to do his nut about it. McLaren, Ferrari and that, they weren't allowed to sell their gear. But we sold all of ours and some. I mean, I remember at the end of 88, I mean, we'd been selling all this stuff. And I mean, we were making thousands of dollars and we'd run out of gear. We'd just run out of stuff. And anyway, Capelli comes walking over to see what's going on. And of course, one or two people start, saying, how much for Capelli? Well, I actually took 50 Aussie dollars for him and we got hold of him.
That was cheap.
Yeah. Well, but it was fair for him. So we got hold of him and we slung him in the crowd over the pit wall. But Ivan was that sort of guy. He's the best driver I've ever worked with. He was a humble, lovely chap. And at that time, he was a damn quick driver as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Hey, listen, just going back to your end of season sale.
Yeah.
I've heard of a couple of guys telling me that same thing at last race, and they would even sell body parts from the cars.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pushing forward a little bit. I mean, in 91, when I was with Brabham, working for Yamaha, but I'd looked after Mark Blundell's helmet for the whole season. And I would prep his helmet and I'd do the visors and on race morning, I'd do all the tear offs for him and everything like that. But I kept hold of all the visors for the whole season. And I'd got about 50 and I'd put them in one of the pack horses to go out to Australia. And
Good. Thinking.
I was an entrepreneur.
That's right.
Either that or a blagger, or whichever way you want to put it. But I sat Mark in the corner of the garage with a marker pen, and I got him to sign every single one of those visors, and I sold a lot over the pit wall, about 50 of them for about, I don't know, $50 a piece, but it was good money. And what it always was for, for us guys. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, we earned a reasonable wage for doing what we did, but it was more of I mean, certainly with Leyton House and everything, it was more the absolute fun aspect of it. I mean, you'd had teams in the past, sort of like, I think teams like Hesketh had probably been one of the real party teams, from the 70s. But bringing it forward, Leyton House certainly took that up to another level. And but yeah, one of the reasons really for selling all this gear was it was our holiday money for the end of the season. Because if we were in Australia or something like that, I mean, everybody would disappear. You'd have a holiday. I mean, I remember my missus and kids flying out to Florida at the end of I think it was the 89 season or something. But I'd sold a load of gear over the pit wall, and that paid for a 2-week holiday in Florida.
Yeah, so it's a free holiday.
It was what it was. It was just, and we'd always have the mechanics would always moan about what the truckies were up to, but that was truckies perks. It's you live by our rules on the road, guys. So.
That's right. Otherwise, you don't get there. Absolutely.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's 89. Am I right? 88, 89.
Yeah. 88, 89. Yeah. I mean, we went to. First off, in January in 89, we went off testing to Rio because obviously, there wasn't just one 3-day test in Barcelona before, in the cold and wet. You used to chase the sun, and Goodyear would always put their tyre test on in Rio. And so we'd go for 2 or 3 weeks in Rio. In January, which was absolutely fabulous. I mean, the cars would just be, running around all day long, and I think we remember most of it, but not a lot, because it was good to go out in Rio.
Because in the early sort of 70s, the equivalent would have been South Africa, I think. Same thing.
In
South Africa.
Yeah. Well, I know. I mean, certainly before. I mean, this is one of the things when I said, how did I get into it with Goodyear? I always remember my pal who'd been there before. I'd see him, we'd go for a beer maybe in February or something, and we'd meet in the pub, and he'd always have the most fantastic suntan. Because he'd spent the whole of January in Rio.
Yeah.
And so to get a bone deep suntan in February, and I mean, I sort of carried on with that as well, because I'd come back from Rio or wherever we'd been, and I'd always got a tan, but I'd make sure that I go down the pub, in midwinter,
in a white t-shirt,
yellow.
Excellent.
Used to highlight it even better. But no, that was it was one of those things. I mean, I lived in a little mining village, really, in the Black Country in the Midlands, and we'd been to Singapore, and I'd bought some dodgy Lacoste shirts, 50p each or whatever they were, and I brought them back, and of course I'd got this suntan and everything, and I said, does anybody want any low-cost shirts? Sorry, Lacoste shirts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, the Black Country guys being what they were, they said, well, what's that? What's this bloody low-cost shirt you have got on? You know, and they'd never heard of the damn things, you know, and here's me trying to flog, you know, the height of fashion, albeit knocked off from Singapore. You know?
Yeah,
oh yeah, I mean, just good times. But yeah, moving forward, as I say, in '89 we did the tyre test. We went back out to Rio for the race, and we took the because the new car wasn't ready, and also in Rio, it was always difficult to try and run new cars because you're so far from home. Most teams didn't have like enough spares to watch it, so you take the old car over there because it was also a known quantity. So and we managed to get third place at that one. It was Nigel's first race for Ferrari, and of course he won that one. Prost came second, and Gugelmin got third. And there's always an image of that. I mean, we went up to the podium to see the ceremony, and Nigel held up this fantastic ornate trophy that he'd won, and he cut his hand on it. And I think we always think what happened was he'd probably got a blister off one of the, driving the car, off his gear stick hand or something. And I think this sharp edge on this trophy cut his hand. Well, Nigel, being Nigel, made a massive deal of it, and he was staggering around the podium holding his hand. And yeah, there was blood on his hand. But I'll always remember Gugelmin looking across at Prost and just doing a hand gesture. That's all I'll say.
The hand gesture.
And he did that on the podium. And I doubt if there's ever any footage of it anywhere.
I'm going to have to look on YouTube afterwards and see if I can find the.
Yeah, I don't think there is. But yeah, he gave. Morris, he just looked over at Prost and gave him the hand gesture behind Nigel's back. So,
Brilliant.
But yeah, after that, I mean, we went on. We obviously came back, went into Europe, did a few races, but then it started getting a little bit. We brought the new car out, the 891, and we had hellish problems. I can't remember whether it was introduced at Imola or somewhere like that. But
that was an Adrian Newey car, wasn't it?
Sorry?
Was that right? Was that an Adrian Newey car?
Yeah, it was another Adrian car, yeah, but he sort of he'd refined the
this car was really thin.
It was really thin. Oh yeah, yeah. Right. I mean, I actually sat in the thing a few weeks ago at Donington. There's a picture on my Facebook and that with me in it. And I'd forgotten actually how small that car was. Because bearing in mind, I used to spend hour upon hour sat in that car on the setup plate, sort of like on a Saturday night, because I was exactly the same height and same weight as Capelli. So I was like the ballast in the car. Again, just winding back, I mean, we were at Monza and we was on this setup patch, on the flat patch. And I'd been in this car for about 4 hours. And, the engineers were doing all the setups and doing the corner weights. And what they used to do was fit a bar on the front of the nose cone and on the rear of the gearbox, and then run a fishing line around it. And then you'd measure off the cambers on the wheels and the casters and everything like that, do all the corner weights and that. Well, we've been hours doing this bloody thing. And I remember Ivan's engineer, a guy called Tim Holloway, I was sat in this car and they were struggling with these corner weights. Anyway, Holloway said to me, he says, Ed, he says, are you sat square in this car? So I'm not leaning one side or another and putting the weights out. I said, yeah. I said, I'm sat square in the car. And he said, and which side do you dress? I said, I don't think which side I dress. And being, you know, the size I am, I said, I don't think it's going to make a lot of bloody difference to the corner weights, Tim. Anyway, the following day, we went out to the race. Anyway, Capelli had qualified about sixth, something like that. The race started, and it went down to the first chicane and banged wheels with somebody. And as it turned out, he bent the suspension arm on the car. So Ivan has actually spent the whole race a bit like that, going straight. So he gets back, and and I think he finished fifth. We get back and get the car out of Parc Ferme. And I said to Ivan, Ivan, have you seen the suspension on your car? And it was like this. He says, I couldn't see it. He says, I thought something was funny. It felt funny. And he'd driven the whole 70 laps or whatever, like this. And that's how the drivers drove around problems.
Of course.
You know, they didn't complain to the pit wall and the guys on the perch saying, "Oh, this ain't right, that ain't right." You just drove around it and did the job. You know?
And of course, fast forward to now, Ed.
Yeah.
If you had that suspension part now, it'd be worth a ton, worth a fortune.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we had
chucked in the bin, wasn't it?
Well, it probably was. You know, I must admit, that tyre that blew up from Nigel. I mean, I wish I'd owned that one.
Oh yeah, too right.
You know, I think that was packed up in a black bag and sent straight back to Akron.
That's right. That's right.
So, but yeah, it was, I said to somebody after, one of the other fitters, he said, I says, what happened with that tyre and that? He says, didn't you hear? I said, no. He says, oh, there was a sniper in the crowd.
Oh, please.
He says, as Nigel was going by, he said he shot it. It's a silly sod.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, but yeah, I mean, we, as I say, you know, back to 89. I remember the 891 was having a hell of a lot of trouble, and we got to Monaco, and we set up down there, and I think we did the Tuesday night, Wednesday night were all nighters, and we were having problems getting the engine to mate up with the tub. And the fuel, we had problems with the fuel pump drive and all that kind of thing. But anyway, we did all-nighters on the Tuesday, all-nighters on the Wednesday, ran the cars on Thursday, which you do in Monaco, had a load of problems then. And then we had another all-nighter down the tip top on the Thursday night. So consequently, we were all pretty wrecked. And, you know I'd been burning the candle at both ends and in the middle. And I sort of, I think on the Friday, again, because you're not running the cars Friday, I think I went for a bit of a kip in the tractor unit. And one of the guys, when he got back to I don't know who it was, but anyway, we got back to the factory and he'd had a bit of a moan about one of the truckies being asleep on the job, sort of thing. Well, that was me. And I think because we'd always got away with being a bit of a party team and what have you. While the cars were doing well, that was okay. But I think when it started to get a little bit more serious, the cars weren't running well. I think we had to be seen to be sort of at least making a bit of an effort. And and so basically I got bumped off the race team. And after that, I gave my neck with it, because the whole point of me being in motor racing was was to travel. I wasn't interested in, you know, being the spares man back in the factory or something like that. Suited a lot of people, but not for me, because I lived a long way away from the factory as well. So consequently, driving 80 or 90 mile a day to work, that wasn't going to happen. So, you know, I had a chat with Ian Phillips, and we agreed to part company, you know. So again, I was looking for another job. And a pal of mine was running, who I'd been at Trasardi with, Middlebridge, a lad called Martin Angeloni. He says, we've got a job at Bromley Motorsport if you want one. We need a truckie. And they just won the British, or the European Championship in F3000 with Roberto Moreno.
Oh, right. Okay.
So they were running a car in the British F3000. And I went along and did the rest of the season with that. And actually, that's the only championship I've ever been involved with that we've won. So there were only, you know, it wasn't a huge grid, and we had a driver. You know, we had one of the Brabhams driving the car, and we won the show. Yeah, it was Gary Brabham. Yeah. So we won the championship, and then of course you come to the end of the season. I mean, it's certainly in Formula 3000, what you have to start doing then is looking for drivers with a budget for the following season.
Yeah, of course.
And you know, as Bromley had got a pretty decent reputation. Obviously, we were winning the championship with Moreno, so a few drivers came along. Some of them, you know, most of them never had the full money. They never did.
Oh, of course not.
But you're testing drivers like I remember Volker Weidler, Michael Bartels. Off the top of my head, I can't remember who else. But yeah, so I got for the following year. I can't quite remember how it came up now, but I think it might have been another Autosport thing, because the Bromley thing had kind of, you know, run out of steam, and you know, being a small little team, they couldn't afford to keep paying you just on the hope of getting a reasonable paying driver in. So it was back to the Autosport pages of jobs, and I spotted this one for a truckie for Nissan for the Group C team. Once again, I thought, well, you know, what's Group C? I mean, I knew it was Le Mans and everything like that, but I didn't have a great deal of experience of Group C. But I went down and met Dave Price and Ian Sanders, who was running the team and that. But so the next thing you know, I'm working for Nissan in Group C, and I did the whole season with that.
Who are your drivers for that? Saying that?
Well, it's Mark Blundell, Julian Bailey, Gianfranco Brancatelli, and who was the other one? Kenny Aitchison.
Okay, two cars.
Yeah, two cars. The RG90. Again, hugely powerful car. And of course, the highlight of that season was Mark getting pole at Le Mans by about 6 seconds, you know, which was, you know, it was far and away.
That's a long time.
Oh yeah. It was that was a huge gap, and certainly against all the you know, the factory Porsches and the Jags and the Mercedes, you know, all of that. It was a good effort, but we got to race day at Le Mans, and of course Mark's on pole, but I think Bailey actually started the race because he was actually the lead driver. But the other car, we'd got, because we got 3 drivers per car for Le Mans. I think it was Bailey, Blundell, and Brancatelli in the one car, and it was Aitchison, Donnelly and Griard in the second car. Of course, the race goes off. The warm-up lap starts, and we've got our headphones on and that, and we suddenly hear as the cars are coming round to the start, to take the rolling start. Kenny Aitchison suddenly comes on in our headphones saying, "I've got no fucking drive," the Irish guy that he is. And anyway, he got into the pit lane entrance. Well, it's on a bit of a slope at Le Mans, and his gearbox had gone, and he was probably 20 yards away from the white line for the pit lane entrance. So consequently, we weren't allowed to go and pull the car in.
Because it's still on the circuit.
It's still on the circuit. So he couldn't push the car, up the slope. I mean, it was full of fuel and all the rest. It was just too heavy for him. So we had to retire the car there and then. And I think what happened was they changed the gearbox overnight. And I'm pretty sure that the gearbox oil had been left out.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So, it was enough to maybe get round one lap with a gearbox grinding and that, but after that, it was curtains. So I remember Griard and Donnelly, because I think Griard had probably done about 2 laps in the car on the nighttime practice sort of on the Wednesday night and that. He'd done about 2 laps. Well, he was off and away from the circuit within about 2 minutes, and Martin was the same. Well, obviously a couple of months later, Martin had that horrific accident at Jerez in the Lotus. But yeah, so that was 1990, and once again we get to the end of it, and Nissan Motorsports decided that because the rules were changing for Group C in 91, it wasn't where Nissan wanted to be, so they pulled out. So we're back to the,
So you're out of work again.
We're out of work again. It's just an occupational hazard of this game, or it seemed to be back when I was doing it. But anyway, over the winter, Dave Price, because he was out of work as well, but of course Dave had got DPS Composite, so they were building like the chassis and what have you for lots of other cars, but including the Mercedes Group C team. But Dave had been offered to head up the Yamaha F1 effort with Brabham.
Right.
Sorry, no, not the Yamaha one. He was team manager at Brabham. That's right. Well, anyway, Dave gave me a call, and he says, "Ed, do you fancy running the Yamaha engine truck?" And obviously back on F1, so off I went. And Yamaha had taken this fabulous facility down in Milton Keynes, which had actually been the Aston Martin Group C factory. But Yamaha took this on, and I mean, it was the company was called Ypsilon Technology, and they were actually helping to develop the Yamaha F1 road car, and that was being built there, which, again, not too many people probably know about that one, but it was a car that Yamaha wanted to build to almost like compete with the McLaren, but they were going to put a detuned V12 engine in it. But knowing how many times our engines blew up, I mean, you probably wouldn't have got to the paper shop in the thing,
Well, you wouldn't have got to Tesco's.